Greetings students. In today's lecture we will be speaking about cooperative learning with regards to information technology. Okay, so as part of today's lecture we will go with the following topics. What is cooperative learning? Types of groups within cooperative learning, and we will also cover lastly paired programming as well. Okay, so what is cooperative learning? Cooperative learning, also known as collaborative learning, it's described as groups of learners that communicate under certain conditions to complete common and specific tasks. Okay, so essentially what they are referring to here is group work amongst students with the aim of actually completing an exercise or activity that is provided to them. Okay, there are other definitions, but we will not get into the definitions in this talk. Okay, so some of the things that you should actually take notice of or take cognizance of is that there are certain factors which have been researched, and these have been outlined in research papers and in your textbook as well, as being critical success factors when it comes to cooperative learning or collaborative learning. Okay, the 5 factors that you see on your screen there have been identified as success factors for any cooperative learning situation. So what we'll do is we'll go through each one and give you an idea of what each one stands for. The first one that you see on your screen there, positive interdependence. Okay, so positive interdependence refers to the autonomy of each student and the success and the resources and the skills that they bring in on their own in a group situation. And it is said, according to your notes and textbooks, that positive interdependence should actually inculcate a mutual goal completion attitude. Okay, so basically every person within a group should be working towards the goal of actually maybe completing an activity or completing an exercise, whatever the case may be. Okay, in this instance they should not be competing with their own agendas within the group, and the uniting factor should be that you cannot succeed individually, and you should pull together and rally and actually work together. Okay, the next one that you see there, responsibility, or synonymously with accountability as well. This basically refers to each member of a group actually taking charge or taking ownership of the work that they do. And the general idea that is given out here is that although you are working together as individuals, you perform alone. Okay, so each member of the team has a role to play within the team, and they should understand the responsibility that they have within their role. Okay, and then the next item you see there, interpersonal skills, which is pretty straightforward. In a group situation or a social situation, you should have the social skills to communicate with other members of your team or your group. You should be aware of certain skills such as conflict resolution, decision making, and so on and so forth. So with regards to being in a group or social situation, these are skills that are imperative to actually being successful. Okay, pretty straightforward. The next one that you see there is positive support, or otherwise known as promotive face-to-face activities, which is spelled out in your textbook as well. And what this basically means is essentially, as the name states, is providing support for members of your team. Okay, so you cannot be in a team and be negative and bring a sense of negativity into the team or group. You have to encourage each other encourage your teammates, encourage your group members, motivate each other, and so on and so forth. Okay, and the last critical factor that you see there is group processing. Okay, when we speak about group processing, we refer to coming together as a group and reflecting on actions that have taken place or should take place that are critical to the group's success. So, for example, together as a group, you can process the actions that were taken in a particular project and decide going forward what actions are critical to success in future and what should be left out, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these 5 factors are basically embedded in theory and research and have been proven to actually being critical success factors when it comes to a situation where there is a group or a team and they need to come together to actually achieve a particular outcome. Okay, so just remember these 5 factors. We will talk about them more when we speak about pair programming as well. Okay, so another important aspect of groups or collaborative cooperative learning are the types of groups that come together. Okay, so whether you are in school or a workplace, you are placed in a group. Whether you are in school, in a class, and you are placed together with other students, there will always be different types of groups that you can be a part of. Okay, not all are good, not all are beneficial. Some are more beneficial than others. Some do not facilitate learning. So it is important to identify groups within your classroom as a teacher and to make sure that they are actually learning, there's actually learning taking place, and that they are not actually dysfunctional. So you can see on your screen that there is a tabulated form of 4 different types of groups, with the groups on the right hand side of your screen being more beneficial and the groups on the left hand side of your screen being less beneficial. And you will observe that pseudo learning groups are less beneficial. Some of the characteristics that you can see on your screen: the group members have no interest in working together. Members are still competing with each other. There is a sense of distrust and withholding of information amongst members, and the sum of the whole is less than the potential of an individual member. Very important. Okay, so what this basically means is that students were put together in a group. They really aren't functioning together. There is no cohesive productivity or cohesive actions within this group. There's nothing bringing them together to actually fulfill the goal. And then when we look at the opposite end of the spectrum, a high performance learning group, and you can see some of the characteristics that they give you there. There's a high level of commitment between members. There's mutual trust, support, and help is given. The 5 elements of cooperative learning are visible within the group. Okay, so remember from the previous slide, we spoke about those 5 elements. They are visible within this group, and this group is much more than the sum of its parts. This group performs far above the expectations. It's like synergy. They all come together. They carry out the activity and perform and deliver something that is as expected or even better. Okay, so within your classroom, and you set up collaborative or cooperative learning, your role as a teacher will be to actually monitor groups. So it is important, therefore, to actually go around and actually look at groups and see how they are performing, whether there is actually learning taking place. Otherwise, you will have to take remedial actions to actually facilitate learning or change up groups and so on and so forth. Okay, so with regards to cooperative learning and collaborative learning, there are many advantages as specified or stated in various literature. You will see on your screen the first point. There is an exposure to different perspectives which enables higher order thinking. So when you place people in a group and each person gives their perspective and shares their thoughts in a group situation, it actually brings to light things that one person may not have thought of before. Okay, this is the same with students. Students think differently. Each one provides an idea. Other members of the group can take away value from other people within their group as well. Okay, the second one, which is fairly obvious, knowledge sharing, comes back to the first point as well. There are people sharing their views or perspectives within a group. You may pick up new knowledge from that. Okay, the third aspect, there is an opportunity to be vocal and share thoughts. Okay, so this is important as well, as it is character building, and basically each student will have an opportunity to actually voice what they are saying, and some things may be very important that other people may not have thought about, so that is important as well. And lastly, but more not least important, is results. Collaborative learning results in higher academic achievement, and also interpersonal skills and increased motivation. Okay, so this is something that is expected when you come together, and a successful learning activity results in higher academic achievement and so on and so forth. Okay, so these are some of the advantages of actually implementing some forms of collaborative learning, cooperative learning, group work, and so on and so forth. And more than that, it actually fosters certain aspects that we may not have thought about as well. So for example, when you place people together in a group, they can offer mutual support to each another. Perhaps there are two students in a group that don't understand a particular section, and they can find support amongst each other and learn together and bring themselves up to speed. Or perhaps there are people who are not very confident in coding, for instance. Coming together in a group situation can help overcome anxiety and provide relief from anxiety with regards to actual coding and just general interpersonal skills. Okay, so another important aspect that the author of Teaching IT Education brings up is that collaborative learning, cooperative learning, or group work is a less used form of education in South Africa particularly. So we should actually try and make an effort to actually include it more, as there are many advantages which I have not even included on these slides that you can actually find in your textbook as well. Okay, so with regards to IT and teaching IT, one form of collaborative learning or cooperative learning that you can implement is pair programming. Okay, so pair programming is not specific to teaching IT. It's also pertinent or relevant to industry and actual real world work situation for students in their long-term endeavors. And basically pair programming is highlighted as a form of learning that allows for many benefits, such as an increase in productivity, a higher standard of coding, an increase in time or faster coding methods compared to as programming individually. Okay, I will go through some of the reasons for that as well as we're going along. You will see. And also that pair programming, because you are working within a group, it allows you to enhance your learning in terms of filling in gaps where other students know things that you don't know, and you know things that other students don't know. So you can bring each other up to speed in this situation. Okay, this allows you to actually create new knowledge. Okay, the characteristics. So when we look at what it says on your slide, the software industry needs graduates who have had meaningful team experiences to form a professional repertoire. Okay, so being a teacher in IT or being somebody in IT, if you have ever applied to an IT firm, more often than not, some of the questions that come up are: name a situation where you had to work in a group and somebody was being difficult. How did you handle the situation? Okay, so this comes back to what we are talking about in terms of pair programming. Okay, so by implementing pair programming within your classroom, it is actually character building, and it allows your students to develop skills that are relevant to answering these types of questions later on in life. Okay, these are some of the advantages of including pair programming. And according to your textbook, pair programming is a style of programming in which two programmers work at the same computer, they execute a task together, and collaborate on the same code. Okay, so within pair programming as well, they often have two roles, and the two roles that you see there are the driver and the navigator. And I will talk about this more in your next slide. But essentially, you have two people within this pair programming, and one is given the role of a driver and a navigator. Okay, so a driver in this instance will basically be the person who's actually sitting at the computer or sitting at a page and is actually writing out an algorithm and is designing the code, designing the algorithm, and actually then going and typing out the code. Whereas the navigator, on the other hand, is the person who will essentially provide direction in terms of programming, in terms of strategy. Will be the person who actually looks at the code that the driver is writing, review that code, try and identify defects, or basically look up resources, look up references, and largely just provide overall problem solving strategies to the driver. And this is essentially a two-man team, and their roles are pretty spelled out, and you can see on your screen as well. This diagram is taken out from your textbook as well. You can find it in your textbook. This is a typical software life cycle when you're on a design an actual program based on an actual problem. Okay, so on the left hand side of your screen, we begin with a problem or an activity in this instance, and we work our way through to the right hand side of your screen. Okay, and then obviously you see the two roles that we described. And the first one there in the box, in the blue box, is the driver, and the red box beneath that is the navigator or the thinker. Okay, so essentially the reason for me highlighting these two aspects are the text written within the arrows. So if you look at the driver is the person between, for instance, decision or designing of decisions or algorithms. Is actually writing and actually answering and actually creating the algorithm, whereas the navigator at the bottom is actually the person gathering information, giving you strategies, looking at alternatives. So he's feeding your ideas, feeding your driver the ideas, and your driver is actually implementing these designs. And then we go on to the second set of arrows, where your navigator is guiding, observing, and monitoring the code that is being implemented or typed out by the driver on the top of your screen. Okay, and then you see in the last stage, when debugging and tracing is happening by the driver, the navigator is also doing his testing on that and on his end. So essentially, this partnership is something that takes place between two people, and you can understand with two minds actually sitting and tackling a programming problem, it actually leads to much quicker solving of programming problems, as opposed to giving a single person a problem, letting them actually think about it for a long time before they actually decide to code. They start off with research, and you don't end up actually completing the intended program within your lesson. Okay, so previously when I stated the advantage of implementing pair programming is that it increases time or it increases efficiency, this is the reason for that. Okay, so just some caveats and some things to think about before implementing pair programming is that your students actually need to have good social skills. Okay, the reason for this is that when you're working in a group, you need to communicate what exactly you are thinking. So it is fine to think in a certain way, but it is also important to actually communicate what you are thinking as well. Okay, in this way, one of the reasons that is highlighted as well in the textbook is by communicating, you can effectively within your group understand what the both of you don't know and what you'll know, and thereby go and actually research the things that you don't know. Okay. Another important aspect related to paired programming is that the roles of the driver and the navigator are not fixed. Okay, it is up to you as the teacher to actually set out rules for when these groups should change, when the roles should be changed. Should it be based on time? Should it be based on reaching a particular objective? It's really up to you. Okay, so these roles are not fixed. You can change them as well. Okay, another important aspect is that if you are given a particular role, the person in your partnership may not interfere with the next person's actual resources. They need to ask them. They need to have permission. Okay, this is giving your actual roles responsibility and accountability within your group. Okay, and the other thing that it comes back to as well, pair programming, we started off this talk as well talking about collaborative learning and cooperative learning. The success of pair programming comes back to implementing or identifying the 5 critical success factors within collaborative learning. So these factors that we talked about at the beginning of this talk apply in this situation 100%. Okay, so when you decide that you want to implement pair programming within your classroom, make sure that you understand the 5 factors and that they are being followed as well. Okay, some takeaway points from this talk as well. Like I said before in the previous slide, use the 5 factors to implement pair programming. Okay, those 5 factors are embedded in theoretical frameworks and research, and it is a good foundation. If you ever decide to implement pair programming, use those 5 factors. Okay. Explain key areas of pair programming. Okay, so like I've spoken to you about the roles of the driver and the navigator, ensure that you will explain to students how pair programming works, what they can and cannot do, what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing. They should be communicating effectively. They should be following a particular schedule. They should be aiming towards a particular goal. Okay. Another point as well, as a teacher, be prepared. Okay, when you are setting out to do pair programming, structure the activities in such a manner that students can actually meet particular goals. Okay, it leads to the next point, specific objectives. Your activities should meet specific objectives set out. There should be structure for this. Okay, and another important point here, don't just implement pair programming for the sake of implementing pair programming. Okay, if you do decide to implement it in your classroom, make sure it is actually linked back to learning outcomes from your CAPS document. Okay, this will give you a good idea from the previous point to actually implement structure. Okay, so far in this entire talk we've talked about collaborative learning, and then pair programming is a good example of that. There are many advantages. There are also some disadvantages as well. Before I end this talk, some of the disadvantages that you may occur or may experience are the following. Sometimes it may happen that pairs that you create in your classroom are incompatible. Okay, in this instance you will have to monitor the situation, if need be provide remedial action wherein you actually change up groups. Okay, other important aspects, sometimes your activity may not follow the scheduled time that you had planned out. Okay, so be prepared for that. And one of the other issues that you come across as well within a group situation is unequal participation. Okay, for any group in that matter, if you've ever had to do a group project, you would know that not all people are on the same page. Some people work harder than others. So be prepared in your classroom as well for groups that do not perform with equal participation. Okay, students, that is it for today's talk. If you do have any questions, please feel free to email me. On Embry as well, if you want, you can post a question as well. I will see you in the next talk.